I told my grandson, who's in the Boy Scouts, to help him on his wood carving merit badge, I would come up with a design for a merit badge and explain how he could go about carving it so he could qualify for his badge. Anyway, I drew this simple arrowhead, and this will be the shape of the wood we'll cut out later to carve a very simple neckerchief, which should pretty well fulfill most of that requirement on his merit badge. But before we do that, I want to explain a few other things that are just as important as making that neckerchief. If you're going to carve, I've laid out a few of my tools here that I use, and I'm going to give you just a very simple explanation on the very important thing about learning how to carve wood. We're not going to get into a whole bunch of tools. I'm not going to go into sharpening. Your dad can help you with that, or some other wood carver. But what I want to first explain is safety. That's the most important thing. Now here I have, this is a fillet glove. You can find this down at Walmart in the fishing section. What this is, it's made out of Kevlar, so your knife blade won't cut into it. It will poke into it, but it won't cut into it. And being as most of what we're going to do is cutting, slicing, we don't have to worry about the poke so much. But just on the safe side, what I did was I took some of this finger tape, which you can buy off of Amazon on the internet. Just type in protective finger tape or carver's tape, and this will pop up. And what this is a rubberized tape that you can wrap around your finger and make yourself a protective guard, like this here. See, I wrapped that around my thumb, see? And that protects my thumb from all these cuts. See those cuts there? Better on this than on my finger. Because if you're going to cut yourself, you're going to do it right in here. Because you're bringing that knife down as you're cutting, and you don't want to do that. So put this on there, good protection. See, I've even gone through it down here on the end. But you just sit there and you just wrap this stuff around your thumb until you get a good thick protection. Now, like I say, you can get this down to Walmart, and as you can see here, I've went ahead and wrapped these this thumb and this forefinger. Same thing on this heavier glove, which I use because I carve a lot. And then I had my wife sew this on. You can have your mother do that. But anyway, what that does is it does the same thing as your thumb protector. You should wear both of these when you're carving. This hand holds your work, and this hand holds your knife, and you're carving like that. So you want everything protected within this little area right here. And this finger tape will do that. Now, a lot of people say, oh, well, I never wear that. Well, a lot of people don't wear their seat belts either. A lot of people don't wear their motorcycle helmets either. And one thing I always look for when I see an accident report in the newspaper is usually at the last sentence of the article, which says seat belts were not in use, helmets were not in use. Well, I'd hate to have to read about you and the last sentence of the article would be finger tape, carving glove was not in use. So just take a moment, use those things, and then you won't have any problem. Okay? So anyway, put that away. One thing you don't want to use is this stuff. This is called vet wrap. Someone might suggest to you, oh, well, use this stuff. Don't use this stuff, because a knife will just go right through it. It's worthless. Don't fall for that. This is what you want, not this. Okay. Now, like I say, here are the tools that I use for about 99.9% of my carving. A simple fishtail gouge, a larger palm gouge, a regular carving knife. My good friend made this for me, and it's a good knife. Or you can use a pocket knife. Here's a pocket knife that another friend of mine gave me. He gave it to me because it has OK on there for Oklahoma. And he ground it down and polished it all up. But it's just a simple carving knife, okay? So you can use your carving knife as long as it's sharp. Everything should be sharp. And I also use this. It's just a box knife or a utility knife you can find down at Lowe's or Home Depot. Make sure if you buy one of these, you get one that doesn't have the fold-up mechanism. You don't want that. So just put that blade in there. Get you a leather strop. This is just a piece of the old belt here that I glued on to a stick. And then just polish that blade edge like that several times. And that will take off that factory wire edge that lays along the very edge of the blade. And the reason this is dark in here, that's metal that come off this blade. Okay? Now, let's talk about wood for a minute. First, let me get my carving glove on here, because I don't want to read about myself in the newspaper either. Let's talk about wood. Now, this is just a square block of wood that I've drawn circles on all surfaces, so I can explain to you how wood works. And the biggest problem that almost every carver has when he starts out is understanding the grain of the wood. Now, the grain of this piece of wood is running like this, up and down like that. It does that on all sides, except the top and bottom. Up here, it doesn't run any direction because all those grains are coming up from the wood or down from the wood. Okay? So let's just take this circle and let's cut it in half right here on all sides. We don't need to cut it in half up here because there's no grain up here except the end grain, all right? Now, another thing you have to remember is while this grain is running up and down, I don't know if you can see this, but the actual structure of the tree, the rings of the tree, are right here. There's one there. And these, if you follow along, they come along here at sort of a slant, like that. They're never going to run completely straight. You might find one that does, but believe me, if you do, it's going to be strange. So knowing that, the grain on this piece, on one side, might run sort of like this. It's still running up and down, but it's at a slight slant. Now, if it runs like that there, that means when you turn it around on this side, it's going to run the opposite direction, like that. Now, you might say, boy, this is sure getting confusing. It's not really. We're just talking about lines here. So, with our circle drawn like that, we know that if we cut into this wood up here this way, what's going to happen? It's going to split down the grain because your chip will follow the grain. If we carve this direction, that means that this piece will flip off like that. See, here I'll show you. Here's my circle. See how that just flipped off of there? Now watch if I try that same thing up here, but come this way. Look, it's not flipping off, is it? It's following the grain of the wood. That grain of the wood is running just like that. So what does that tell me? That tells me that I should not carve down towards my circle. I should always carve away from it, taking the grain of the wood into consideration. So if I turn my knife around and I carve up, the wood flips off. Just like that. And then I turn it around here and do the same thing. just like that. See there? Now I couldn't do that. Here, look watch what would happen if I tried to go against nature and did this up here. See what's happening? Besides it being very hard to do, you're bucking nature and it just doesn't work. So do it the right way. You'll find that it's a lot easier. It applies on all sides. See there? It makes it, when you understand how that wood goes, the structure and the grain of the wood, 90% of your problems are just going to disappear. But if you try to go against it, that's what's going to happen. And it'll happen like that every time. And when you don't have control of everything, and believe me, when you're going against, see how it's splitting? When you're going against it, that's when accidents happen, and that's when you're going to cut yourself. And that's why you wear this stuff, because you probably will cut yourself. But wearing these things will keep you from cutting yourself too bad. Okay? I'm not carving my circle now, I'm just showing you. As long as you turn the wood around, remember, just everything on a piece of wood is a circle when you're taking chips off. Just like this arrow. Let's just draw it like we've cut out our blank, and now we want to figure out, well, how should I carve this? Well, let's just take into consideration here, remembering the principle of the circle and how it affects the grain. Here's a circle here. Here's a circle here. This will be rounded right here, so that's sort of going to be a half a circle there. All right? This area here, the main part of the arrowhead, this will be sloping down from the center, like that, on each side. Sharper and sharper as we go down the point of the arrowhead. So what are we doing here? We're carving off of a circle. It's just that we're not carving the complete circle. But these circles will get smaller and smaller and smaller as we go down to the tip. So that means when we're carving, we want to carve down from this center line this way on that side, and down from this way on this side. And up here, our grain's going to be running up and down with the point of the arrow, like that, which means up here, we're on this circle, we're going to be carving down that way and up that way on each side, right across that arrow. You see how that works? It's very simple, as you'll see as we carve this thing. And by remembering these, that the circle and how it lays on the grain of the wood, this will be a real easy project to do, okay? So in the next video, we're going to cut this blank out and we're going to carve it. So until then, I'll talk to you later.